This podcast is available on our website, zipsportsmedia.com, and from all good podcast providers. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to episode 3 of season 3 of A Game of Two Halves. I'm your host, Sean Watson. Joining me once again on the line is Kieron Dobson. Kieron, welcome along. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Sean. Thanks for asking. Back in England, as you can see.
Tier 3 lockdown now?
Do you know what? I think so. Southport's one of those weird places where it's not Lancashire. It is technically Merseyside, but then it's only because it's in Sefton Council, but it's next door to Lancashire. So yeah, I think they're Lancashire, Liverpool, and Greater Manchester now are all tier 3. So I think tier 3, less intense than in Wales. I'll say that. Glad I got out of there in time.
There was a thing with Chester FC couldn't host a game or something at the weekend because I think it was Chester because half their ground is technically in Wales. So the stricter lockdown in Wales meant that they couldn't.
I didn't actually know that.
I can't remember the exact thing now, but you saying that's just sort of jogged my memory a little bit. So.
Chester is one of those places again where it's like right on the cusp. So it doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest. Yeah, it's a lot more intense in Wales. I am glad to have got out.
Good to know. Thanks for coming along today. Thanks for joining us. A lot to go at. We've had a couple of weeks hiatus, so a lot to come back with this week. Thank you very much for joining us and listening to us this week. It's much appreciated. Thanks for coming back to everybody listening and watching. But we'll get started with what has been a lack of goals in the Premier League this weekend compared to the first 4 or 5 games. Premier League started in hot fashion, rattling along at something like 3.8 goals a game for the first 4 or 5 game weeks, but this week the goals seem to have dried up. I think the average is just under 2 goals a game now, having seen the Monday Night Football last night. So, straight question, Kieron, why have the goals dried up the past game week? What do you think?
Don't know.
Okay, next question.
Opinion. So... Yeah. I've got a theory, but God knows. I mean, it is only a theory. No one really knows why so many goals being conceded in the first few weeks. There's obviously different, you could speculate that it's because of the lack of pre-season.
And maybe teams have seen it as a little bit of a free hit the first 4 or 5 games, sort of go for hell for leather and see where it takes you. But seeing those stats might have just gone, right, we need to batten down the hatches a little bit now.
I think that is my guess. I think if you ask me what I think it is, I think what happened was we didn't have a pre-season. Obviously, that came off the back of a really intense restart at the end of last year. And I think that some teams are prepared better than others because of the nature of, the time they had off in between. Obviously, some teams played in Europe. And I think that what happened was teams went into it as best as they could in the opening few weeks. But I think that because of the amount of goals that some teams have conceded, and just because of, looking across the Premier League, there's been so many goals scored. I think that, I want to say contrived, but I think that there's been a conscious effort by a lot of clubs to try and keep a clean sheet. Obviously, we talked about the United Chelsea game in the second half. But yeah, I mean, they were 2 teams that didn't want to concede. And I think you've seen that in a few of the other games as well this weekend. So that's my guess, but who knows? It could just be that things are starting to level off now because players are becoming more match fit. It could be that teams have more time to work on defensive shape. Who knows? But that would be my guess. I don't know what theories have you got?
No, virtually the same. I mean, seeing Liverpool and United both get hide-ins on the same night might have just scared a few more teams just to lock the back door a little bit. I think Liverpool and United are both in the top 3 goals conceded teams in the league so far this year. I think along with somebody like Southampton. I think it could be them.
But City won't be far off either.
No. I mean, teams are shipping goals left, right and centre, aren't they? I mean, Chelsea have conceded 3 on 2 occasions. It's 3-3 against Southampton, 3-3 against West Brom. You can see why that 0-0 happened on Saturday with United and Chelsea. We'll get to that in the second half. But yeah, it's a shame really because I enjoyed the first 4 or 5 weeks. It was anybody's league. It still is, but goals going in left, right and centre is great for a neutral and great for fantasy football as well. More to the point.
Yeah, unless you'd spent a lot of money on your defence like some of us. So, again, I'm happier that we had those first few weeks. I do think there will still be... I still think this will probably be a record-breaking year in terms of goals just because of the nature of it.
The lack of fans as well, that can't be a non-factor.
maybe not. I mean, I did see something that suggested that actually during the restart last year, where obviously there were no fans, that goals, maybe it was expected goals, but it might have been goals, didn't actually increase that much. So maybe the fans aren't having as much of an impact as we first thought. But I have to say, obviously, I think that will be a factor. And I think also, again, just the fact that we've got so many games condensed into such a tight period. Because I think as well, because we've not had a proper pre-season and because you can see that some teams are still trying to figure out who their 11 is, or who should be the core of their starting squad. And I just think that will naturally mean that as time goes by, we'll see a bit more fluctuation in the squads until maybe that final period where teams really nail down, right, we found our winning formula sort of thing. So
yeah, and especially the top 6 teams essentially now playing Saturday, Wednesday, with the Champions League and stuff, because I think the Champions League, the first 3 game weeks are going back to back. So, it gives the lower half teams a bit more of a chance against them if they've got an extra game on them, and an extra game to prepare and rest up. So maybe that, as you say, that'll level out as the season goes on. But I hope it does. I hope we do carry on to see as many goals as we have, because as I said, as a neutral, it's great to watch, and you don't know, you can't put a banker on as a bet anymore, or at least for the first 4 or 5 games, because you just can't predict any result. I mean, 7-2 Villa Liverpool, you'd have got a lot of money for that. I don't know how much, but you'd have got a hell of a lot. So as a neutral, I mean, I'm not a neutral, but from a neutral standpoint, I do hope that goals continues to go in, because, and maybe another reason we are seeing a lot of goals as well. It's tailed off a little bit, but we are seeing an increased amount of penalties. I was going to go there, didn't you?
Yeah.
The handball law is very ambiguous at best, or very contentious, I should say. But the long and short of it is, the long and short of it is that we're seeing more penalties given because of it. And the introduction of VAR as well in the past 2 years has heightened the amount of penalties given, and mistakes have dropped. So that will have an effect on the number of goals scored for sure. It's particularly the case with United, as we'll get to.
I think as well, though, it's a good point to make, because obviously they did change the law, or the interpretation of the law, or whatever the wording is, about maybe it was in the 3rd game week, and obviously we'd had a lot of penalties, and after the Eric Dyer decision, which is what you were doing there. Yeah. For those listening and not watching us, Sean keeps raising his hand when he's talking about the handball, in case anyone's not aware of what handball is.
I'm working on it, Kieran. It's a flaw, but it's a natural reaction. The hand goes up
natural silhouette.
So I was demonstrating Eric Dyer's penalty giveaway. You've probably all seen it, where his arm was flailing, the arm comes up again, and it hit his hand. He had no idea about it, but the referee at that time had no choice but to give the penalty. So, as you say, that law has been slightly tweaked, hasn't it, to allow for that.
Which could explain why some goals have dropped off. Because there were a couple of occasions, I can't remember which game it was now, but there was one of the games I watched this weekend. I can't remember which one now, and I can't remember who it was, but there was a time where they were looking at a ball that hit the hand, and they were saying maybe, if that happened the first few weeks,
Villa
it would have been given.
Villa City. It's West Ham City, sorry. Yeah.
Someone slid in. I can't remember who now.
I think it was Bowen on the wing or something, and he chested it, and it sort of maybe brushed his arm, but they never gave it.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like I said, there'll have been a couple of them where maybe in the opening few weeks that would have been given, and then if that goal goes in, do the other team react, and then we get more goals. Through that. So it opens games up when goals are scored, obviously. So it's not just the penalties we're losing out on; it's the goals that would potentially come after the penalty, where teams open up to try and equalise or
absolutely
whatever. So
domino effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking of VAR, one of the incidents we didn't get a chance to cover last week was you like that segue, was the Jordan Pickford Virgil Van Dijk incident that I think we'll probably agree should have been a red card. Whether or not he was offside or not, forget that. It should have been given as a red card, but Van Dijk looks like he's going to be out for the season. Pickford didn't get sent off at the time or any retrospective action. Memphis Depay came out in the week with a T-shirt saying something like "Get well soon, Virgil" or something. It's his Dutch teammate. I get why he's done it. As a United fan, it leaves a bit of a bitter taste, but we move on. What's your whole take on the whole incident? Do you think Pickford should have been off? Has there been an overreaction from the Liverpool camp and fans? Where do you stand on it?
I think it's a bit more of the latter, personally.
You don't think Pickford should have been sent off?
I don't. It depends on what the exact wording of the law is. I think, you could be sent off for reckless foul play or something on those lines. Yeah. I genuinely don't think it was an intentional foul. I think if it was...
No, I don't.
So...
Well, that shouldn't matter because, if you go in head high with your boot and kick somebody's, like the Edison Mane one from 2 seasons ago... Mane played the ball, but he didn't get the ball.
But that's the thing, though. I suppose you could make the case with that the Mane red card. His foot's maybe 6 foot in the air with his studs up.
Yeah.
And he's coming up to a keeper. He's coming up to head the ball. You can see why that would be given as reckless foul play. Whereas what Pickford did wasn't that unnatural. He ran out to close out the cross. He had to make sure that Van Dijk wasn't getting onto the ball, and they were both sort of fighting for the same space. Because if Pickford doesn't come out and challenge Van Dijk, and the ball swings in a yard further, which the curl of the ball can, you don't have much time to react as a goalkeeper. It's about getting to the space first so that Van Dijk can't get a strike on goal. Yeah. And I don't. So and what he's done, it's not like he's gone in studs up or anything like that. He's gone in and then he's sort of scissored onto, it's an unfortunate phrase, but that's what he's done on top of Van Dijk's leg, and obviously the weight coming down has caused the injury. So I can see why you could, I think it's probably similar to the Nani one against Real Madrid a couple of years ago, where it's a completely innocent bit of play, but obviously could have, Nani's didn't cause any long-term injury. Obviously this one did, but you can't, I don't think you can give a punishment because it's caused an injury. Because I can see why Liverpool fans would be upset about it, but if I was a Liverpool fan, probably the best punishment for Everton would be to let Pickford carry on playing because he's not a very good goalkeeper. So I wouldn't cry so much. I mean, what's done is done. What really matters to them is obviously Van Dijk's out injured. It's just one of those challenges for me. It wasn't intentional, and I don't think it was a particularly dangerous bit of play. So I do think it was a bit of an overreaction. Speaking of bits of overreactions from Liverpool, this is what maybe I'm being harsh with that assessment, but it's because of the things like I'm going to talk about now that they do that United fans like myself who are bitter and others sort of take a dim view of whatever they say. Because I don't know if you saw the foul that VAR ruled Fabinho had made against Sheffield on the weekend.
No, I didn't know.
So the tackle happens on the edge of the box and Fabinho wins the ball, but I mean, he does follow through and take the player out. It's a debate whether it's a foul.
Yeah, in 10 years ago, it would never have been given, but these days, they are given, aren't they?
It's a new day, and we all, we've all won and lost penalties on these things. But there was a period on Twitter where Liverpool fans were all saying that VAR were not looking to check to see whether it was a foul or not, were only looking to see whether it was in the area, not reviewing the foul. And VAR came out and rubbished that and said, well, that's absolute nonsense. But it's just that thing in Liverpool fans' mentality and psyche where... No,
we can't say
I can. It is every single Liverpoolian. They do this thing where just say it was harsh. Don't say, oh, VAR, they're not even looking to see whether... How would Liverpool fans even know that? But it became a thing, and then it had to, to the point where VAR had to come out and clarify that they were checking to see whether it's a foul. So it's because of things like that that maybe
diminish their arguments in
a little bit for me. Yeah. Anyway, it's just every single thing. It's always, and I'm not talking about the City. I'm not Boris Johnson here. I'm talking about the fans of Liverpool Football Club. Just every little decision that happens only happens to us. Only we get bad decisions against us. Only us. And it's so tiring.
I see it from the City fan bases. I see it from a lot of fan bases, to be
perfectly
honest. But
you see it from every rival fan base. I'm sure they'd say the same about us. But
yeah, they would.
Yeah, I am bitter. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, we know you are bitter towards Liverpool, Kieran. But okay, so my opinion on the Pickford Van Dijk was that first view, I said it should be a red card. It should be a penalty and a red card. I didn't know he was offside at the time. My opinion hasn't changed. I still think Pickford should have been sent off for that. I thought it was reckless, excessive force, and endangering the safety of opponent. X, Y, and Z. I think he should have been off. The fact he wasn't is a subjective decision. That's why they have a video assistant referee to make that subjective call. It wasn't, the black and white line of offside, is he or isn't he? It's still down to an opinion. So he hasn't been banned, he hasn't been sent off. We move on from that. But I think the idea of Pickford being out for the same length of time as Van Dijk because he injured him was one of the most ludicrous things I've ever seen. I don't know if that argument was put forward seriously, but if it was, hang your head, because that's a disgrace. I think there has been an overreaction from the Liverpool camp because it's Van Dijk. He's the most important player. If it had happened to Diogo Jota, yeah, okay, they'd probably be furious about it, but they wouldn't go as far as they have. It's because it's their main man, and they know that their title hopes have taken a big hit with him not being a part of the majority, if not all, of the season. So that's where I stand on it. It'd be a big miss for Liverpool, and it has blown the title race open a little bit. I will say that, especially coming so soon after the transfer window shut. I think it was the next game or the game after.
So it gives them no opportunity to.
They've got to wait 3 months now to replace him. And Carragher said on the Monday Night Football right away after, he said Liverpool should have a defender lined up to come in on January the 1st right away so that he can come right in. And I do agree with that. If they are going to win the league this season, they can't go with a centre-back pairing of Fabinho and Matip or Fabinho and Gomez. It's not going to work out for them. So I think that's why the Liverpool fans are outraged as they are. And I can see why. But to say that he should be banned for the length of time, Van Dijk's out injured, is just ludicrous, because there'd be players left, right and centre not playing. Van Dijk himself would probably be not playing. I think the counter-argument to that was, well, if that's the case, that players are banned for the amount of time that they injure a player for, Van Dijk wouldn't have even been on the pitch for Everton because he injured somebody for, it was Gerard Deulofeu last season. So he's still out injured. So Van Dijk wouldn't have been on the pitch by that token. So it's a nonsense. That would never work.
Yeah, it's just the sort of thing that only gets cooked up whenever these things happen to Liverpool FC, as far as I can tell anyway. But again, I do have a tainted view of it. I did want to talk about what that's done to the Premier League in terms of the title race this season too, because in our top 50 footballers podcast, which we've tried to record a couple of times but had technical issues and are still to do, I won't put any spoilers, but Van Dijk's right high up in my list. I think he is. He is. He's higher in mine.
He is, yeah.
And
25th isn't high, Kieran. Come on.
Incentive to get this podcast out now.
Yeah.
He's the best centre back in the world. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Is he the best centre back of all time, like Danny Murphy said?
No, he's definitely not. And what I mean by that is he's in the conversation.
Yeah, but that's it at this stage, because he's won one league and one European title.
An absolutely, again, another thing that happens with Liverpool fans, and there are a lot of ex-Liverpool players and pundits and in the media. They do this when they get a good player. It's always overbaked. Van Dijk is the best centre back in the world, and he has been for a few years now. And he's, this is a big injury, and it's come at a rough time because, I think he's 28, 29, he'll be 29 when he comes back from it. He won't have that many years left, and who knows what the lasting effects of the injury will be, because it's a serious one, the ACL. But there's reason to believe that he should come back, and he looks like he looks after himself. And, yes, he does rely on his pace, but I can't believe that it'll drop off to the extent that it would impact a winger or a striker.
No.
He's excellent, and he's he's the main reason they're as successful as they have been the last few years. That should be enough, but no, it has to be he's the best ever. Well, that's a ridiculous statement because there are so many other centre-backs that have been far more successful than Van Dijk.
Yeah,
and
in the league, in the Premier League, not even Europe or the world.
And the thing that, and again, I love Van Dijk. I think he's excellent, and I think he would be. I do put him in the conversation with Terry, Rio. Well, I put him in these conversations. I think of him as being that level, but I don't think he's the best yet because I don't. It's hard to quantify that. But what I would say is, the thing about Rio and Terry, and Vidic and Carvalho, and even Sol Campbell for a period, these players all had to compete with each other for that title in their time. Van Dijk's only really got Laporte in this division, and in the world, I've said this before. You've mentioned Koulibaly. I mean, there's discussions that maybe Diop Upamecano, I might be butchering these pronunciations, so apologies, could potentially step into it. Varane is a person that has been considered in that level before, but we've seen him make a couple of mistakes this last year, and I don't know if you saw Real Madrid the other night.
I heard they were catastrophic.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
So there are a lot of good defenders out there, but there aren't that many at the top level. And you could say, well, that speaks to how good Van Dijk is, but I do look at the rest of the world at the minute and all these other centre backs, and it's not that they're all so good and Van Dijk's a level above. It's just that there aren't that many world-class centre-backs out there anymore, just because the game's changed and what we think of, what we value in a centre-back, we've got to change, is what I would say.
Well, you still think Lindelof's a good centre-back, so that's the bar.
No, but what I should say is, I just want to define good. So if Van Dijk is world-class, I would say he's nothing's 10, but I'd say he's 9.5 out of 10. Lindelof, I'm putting at 6.5. So there's levels. I'm not saying he's in that conversation. Sorry, I've digressed quite a lot there. The title race it's on. There's a lot of teams that are in contention. I'm a big fan of Fabinho, but as good as he might be at centre back, they're going to miss him in midfield then.
Yeah.
And he did protect the back four, which was already pretty good. And they did rely on him at times to do that. So they'll miss him in midfield, and he'll go into centre back, and he's not ever going to be Van Dijk, and no one's going to expect that. But I don't know if you've seen. I would take it that you didn't see the Sheffield game or the highlights for it, but did you see any of the Ajax game either?
What, the 13-0?
No. the game against Liverpool.
I saw sort of 5 minutes of the highlights, but not.
Yeah, they had a lot of chances, as did Sheffield on the weekend, and I'm sure
it's going to happen, isn't it? It's going to happen now.
Liverpool will improve as they get used to playing without Van Dijk, but with that said, it's not going to be the same. And they played such an aggressive style of football that he enabled them to do, because he was able to defend one-on-one, stop counter-attacks, stop the ball over the top, stop it when someone's breaking out of midfield, win all the aerial duels you could wish. And the other thing that's underrated about him is that he'd score the odd important goal as well.
Oh, yeah.
So they're gonna miss him for a lot of reasons. They are going to struggle without him. The defence, I don't know what this is going to mean. It's not to say they're out of the title race, they're still
the favourites.
Well, I think City are the favourites.
Really? Given how they've started?
I think the bookies are City's favourites, probably because I think they did before the season, but I think now Van Dijk's out, I think the hard money is going to be going on City.
If I had to pick Liverpool or City, I'd still pick Liverpool.
But I think that's because you despise City.
No, it isn't. It's what I've seen in the opening few games. City haven't blown anybody away yet.
No, but
they haven't looked anywhere close to being the team they have been. So, and they haven't invested, like we've said. They brought Diaz in for 65 million at centre back. Obviously, I'm not going to judge him just yet, but spent a lot of money on centre backs, and they've not got it right still. And they didn't bolster the attacking talent, not replace David Silva. For me, I'd still back Liverpool to win this league, but it will be closer than last year. There's no question.
And it will be closer between second and third this year as well. And whether that is close enough or not to make it interesting, I don't know yet.
Well, everybody's beating everybody right now. That's the thing. You put any two teams up against each other, and you could make a case for either side getting, realistically, not Fulham or Sheffield United, but top 15 in the league, anybody can beat anybody on their given day, which hasn't always been the case. So it is wide open.
right now, I do think things will level off, and I think City will be the team that, when they find their groove, that they'll really
emerge from the pack.
The thing for me about Liverpool won it well last year, but I think a lot of that was down to City being without Laporte and Liverpool just being a different gear. It was going to be hard to expect them to hit that gear anyway this year, and they've now lost.
Well, we always said, didn't we? They were fortunate with injuries, and they have been for the past 2 years. You know, Salah, Mane, Van Dijk, the goalkeeper Alisson, they've all been relatively fit for most of the games.
And there are Liverpool fans that would argue and say, we've been without Oxlade-Chamberlain, we've had injuries to Gomez, we did have a couple of injuries to Alisson, and that did mean on a couple of occasions they had to play Adrian, who it did hurt them at times.
Yeah, they got knocked out of the Champions League because they had to play Adrian. There's no doubt.
They had issues with Kate. They have had some injury issues, but to your
on the
point,
whole,
they're big players.
Yeah, I mean the injuries to Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gomez, they're replaceable players. They're not Salah, Mane, Van Dijk, where you haven't got somebody on the bench you can bring in like for like. They just haven't. But Oxlade-Chamberlain, you can bring Henderson in or Wijnaldum or whoever. They're at that level where they can be replaced.
And we don't need to explain the importance of Van Dijk, but I mean, Liverpool played him a lot. Like there weren't many. I can't think of games where he was rested in the Premier League. I think he played every game. They really did rely on him. So I mean, he's obviously going to be a big miss. And I think the fact that City would have closed the gap anyway, just through if they keep the team fit. And Liverpool, naturally, I just think would have had to have accepted there'd be a level of, a certain level of drop off this year. Now losing, whether he's their best player or not, but their most important player, I think we'd all agree, that's going to hurt them a lot. And I think with City, the thing with City that I think maybe is underrated about them right now is Laporte is to come back, and I spoke before about how important I think he is to them, but they've also brought in a couple of players. I know you were saying they didn't replace Silva, but they've still got other solutions there that I think they just need to figure out. And I think once they do figure that out, they'll be fine. And I think the other thing, I wouldn't read too much into the form so far this season, just because they've not been able to consistently play a recognised number 9, and I do think they need that.
Yeah, I'm not looking into anybody's form really at this stage. Like we've said, It's just been a bit of a carnival of football the first few games, so it'll settle down.
If they can get to a point where one of Aguero or Gabriel Jesus are fit to play every game, which you would expect eventually they will. I mean, it's a strange decision to play Aguero 3 games straight after 4 months off, and he's got injured again now. But when one of the two come back and they're fit, they will start to really hurt teams again, I think. And once they're going to have to tinker with the defence till they find the 4 or 5 that he likes. But once they do, I think they'll be okay. But one thing I would like to say about City, because what I was going to say, I have 2 hot takes for this podcast.
Number 1, we'll put the graphic up.
Liverpool, is this their window shut now?
In what context? Their window for success.
Yeah.
Okay.
Van Dijk, excellent.
This is a big call.
28, I believe. Going to be injured until he's 29.
Yeah.
Salah, Firmino, Mane, all 28, 29, all going to get close to 30 next year. Probably question marks of whether they win trophies this year. They did not compete. I know they won the Champions League, but in the domestic cups, they've not competed. They've forfeited them almost. And if they don't win one of those, and they don't win one of the Champions League or the Premier League or both, I don't think they will win either this year. But we'll see. Obviously, they're capable. I'm not saying they're not, but it's not hard to fathom a scenario where Salah or Mane potentially move on next summer. They have to think again about. I know they signed Jota, and I've said before that I think he's an excellent sign because they needed to make these signs before one of Salah and Mane either degraded with age or moved on. They have to get a player in now so that if it doesn't work, they've took one shot. they can go and try and buy another player. You can't lose Salah, try and replace him that window, and then hope the next player can settle very quickly. And it's, you have to have players there that have been at the club for a bit, played that system. I just think they're going to have potentially next summer too many gaps to fill. And if it's not next summer, it'll be the one after, and they really will then. In 2 years, you look at that squad, the profile of it, they're going to have to make a lot of replacements. And I'm not saying they're not capable of doing it. They've invested very well and they've recruited really well. But if we're being completely honest, they did really well with Mane and Salah. They picked them out at a good age, and they got them at very good value. But Van Dijk, they had to go and pay a big fee for, and obviously it's paid off massively, and he's stepped up. Alisson, I think, was 65 million, which is not an insignificant amount spent on a keeper even in today's day and age. Fabinho cost 40 million. It's these big, huge name signings which have took them to this level. It's not signing Jota for 40 million or getting Oxlade-Chamberlain for 35. It's not, or Minamino for 7. Those aren't the answer. They're going to have to eventually replace the stars. And if Van Dijk hurts them, they don't win a trophy this year, which is conceivable, then that's one of their peak years with the best players at 28, 29, at the peak of their powers, not winning a trophy. And again, Real Madrid and Barca and Bayern haven't spent money this year, neither of Juve, I don't believe, or any significant amount. It's not beyond the realms of possibility these teams might come sniffing around teams like Liverpool next year and picking them off. That was my first hot take. Is this the end of their window? Okay. I mean, what do you think to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fully agree with everything you said, which is a rarity for this show. But it could be a year that they do miss out. Unlike you say, Salah, Mane, Firmino, Van Dijk's prime years. And football is becoming more and more about people's primes and about peaking at the right time. And you don't get teams now with many players, 32, 3, 4 plus, 4 or 5 players that are all going to be at that stage at that time, at the same time, that are still a force. You've got this Bayern team with Lewandowski in it, who's 32, I think. Modric is 35 now for Madrid, but these players are in isolation. Mm-hmm. Having that group of players now, the front three, Van Dijk, Alisson, that are all going to get to that age at the same time, isn't going to work out great for Liverpool. And like you say, they're at that age now where they're either going to have to be replaced, they're going to have to be moved on for a fee and have somebody lined up, or they're going to have to win trophies now. And losing Van Dijk now, all right, we're not writing the season off as a complete write-off at this stage. They could still win the Premier League, the Champions League. We don't know. But it does seem like a big blow when this team's at a peak age. I do definitely agree with what you're saying there. I have sort of condensed it a little bit. But yeah, it is a sensible argument to make.
Your point there, though, again, about the ages. The thing is, Liverpool have been building for this point.
Yeah,
it's all been about getting these players, and they're all at the peak now. And they've done that excellently. You cannot fault the job they've done. They've spent the money so well, and they've built the squad properly. But they might not have. But I mean, touch wood for me, this injury could have taken one of their years. You don't in this day and age. I think Klopp said it the other week in an interview that no one will dominate anymore for like United did. Those days are gone. You get windows, a bit like you do in most of the sports now. You get tight windows where that squad hits the peak and then it doesn't. You've got to then go through that transition, build the next team.
Yeah.
Again, days of old. We enjoyed United at the best, where Ferguson was able to have success, transition for 2-3 years, building a new squad with some new young players, mixed in with some of the veteran type players, and they would roll into the next phase. So obviously that was the formula then. It worked with Ferguson. He was a master of it. Liverpool could do that. Klopp's there till 2024, but it's not easy. And again, going back to that point that Klopp made about no one's going to dominate anymore, I think a lot of that is because there's more clubs out there now at the top level, particularly in the Premier League, there's more lions fighting over the scraps. There's more competition for the top players. We saw this year Liverpool wanted Timo Werner.
Yeah.
He's not had the best start, at Chelsea, but I think he would have slotted into that Liverpool team pretty seamlessly, and I think he would have offered the rotation with the front three, and you could even have played him at the 9 potentially, and still with Salah and Mane, and I think that would have been then a player that is at the potentially at the top level in a couple of years, so that when one of Salah or Mane goes, or again I keep going on about ages a little bit, he's there and he's in that Liverpool team, playing Jurgen Klopp's football with these players. And that's the point. That's the next step for them, is to buy a couple, because you can never completely just scrap all your top players and then buy 5 new stars. It takes time. We always see this with Chelsea, City, when they came into money. It took about 3 windows of constantly throwing money at players and waiting to see what stuck. And that's where we are.
Okay, so that is the end of the first half of season 3, episode 3 of the Game of Two Halves podcast. Thank you for sticking with us. In the second half, as usual, we will be dissecting Manchester United's recent run. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had this podcast, so we've got quite a bit to catch up on. But I'm sure Kieron has got some Monday Night Football reaction to give us, so stick with us for part 2. Welcome back to part 2 of the Game of Two Halves podcast. In this half, as usual, we will be discussing Manchester United. Bit of a mixed bag of form recently, coming off the 6-1 Spurs defeat. They have reacted well. They beat Newcastle 4-1 at St James's Park. They won impressively in Paris with a Marcus Rashford winner. That was 2-1 in Paris in midweek, and then since then they've drawn 0-0 with Chelsea at Old Trafford. So a good response from the 6-1 defeat, but still not where ideally United fans would like them to be. What's your sort of take on the past 2 weeks since the international break and the 6-1 hiding at the hands of Spurs?
If you listen to the first half, you probably won't be surprised to hear. I'm just going to reserve judgment on United at the moment, because I do think that we're one of the teams that struggled the most with the pre-season scenario we found ourselves in. And I just think that once Solskjaer's figured out which is his best team, and that'll include formation, because I think there's question marks over that, we'll find form again, a bit like we did in the the restart last year. I don't think that was a fluke. I think that was real. So I'm not too worried about. I didn't like losing 6-1 to Spurs at all, but I do. It's easy for me to dismiss that, to be honest, as a freak result.
Yeah.
And I think, I was disappointed not to beat Chelsea. You want to win that game, and on paper, I think you could argue that maybe we should. I know they spent a lot of money, but they're not quite set yet.
Was it a missed opportunity in the Chelsea game? So let's do the most recent first.
Yeah.
We're both happy with the Newcastle and the Paris performances. PSG, they were good results, good response to this 6-1 hiding. But was it a missed opportunity not to go out and sort of punch Chelsea on the nose a little bit in the first half an hour after the confidence building wins in Paris and Newcastle?
Yeah. I think we should be aiming to win these games. We're at home.
I get why you sort of shut up shop, because we've conceded the top 3. I think we're in the top 3 for most conceded goals this season in the Premier League. You needed a clean sheet. We've not had one yet. I get it. I do understand.
I love Ollie, and I think it's understated the job he's done with United. I think we're in a really good position now, a really good place that we've not been in for. I think we had the year we finished second, Mourinho, where you could feel good about us going into next year. Obviously, we know how that ended, and a period under Van Gaal where the young players were on form, and it looked like we're starting to go maybe down the road Ajax went down with him years before. But Ollie right now, I'm happy with the squad that he's built for now, and I'm happy with being in the Champions League again. Obviously, I'm very happy.
Sound like the board.
No, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect that after one full season we should be saying, right, we should be title challengers now.
No,
that
we've just
squad.
said that. We've just said that in part one about Ferguson taking time to rebuild the very best teams. We haven't had a great team for 10 years now. So yeah, I mean the team that Ollie inherited was, I mean there's a reason Mourinho got sacked, isn't there? We all know why. That team was nowhere near where it needed to be. So third in a Champions League spot last season was as good as he could have possibly done.
Yeah, and to that point, I just think that supporting United for the next, particularly, if you go back to what I wish I could have told myself when Solskjaer came in is, have patience basically, because
I told you on the podcast.
Yeah.
I told you that.
But I wouldn't have listened to you. I would have listened to
I know you would. I know you would. No, but I said, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but I said, look, if you've got Ollie in, give him the time. He needs 2-3 seasons minimum.
Yeah, and the thing is, it might sound silly. I was talking about this after the Paris game, but before Newcastle, Ollie out was trending again.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
The squad, and I think he became the favourite for the sack after the Spurs game. I think. So,
even though domestically he's in the best form over the last 32 Premier League games out of any manager in the league, win percentage, number of wins, loss percentage, he's currently topping that chart. So I mean, if you're talking objectively and looking at the facts, there's no reason in the world that Solskjaer should be sacked right now.
Yeah, and I think I will talk about the Chelsea game in a minute, I promise. But when you look at the PSG game, a lot of people, the joke is that he's a PE teacher, not very good at, at the tactical side of the game. But I've seen too much evidence of him managing some of these big games right. Well, nearly all the big games. I can't really think
Spurs.
Of Liverpool, Spurs, and Arsenal have beaten us over the last couple of years. But I mean, we were one of the few teams to take points off Liverpool last year before they won it.
Yeah.
Spurs, I do consider that to be a bit of a freak result. And then the Arsenal games, I think that was us running out of steam a little bit.
I can't remember that. When did we lose?
It was at the end of his, when he was interim coach.
Yeah.
We were flying. We went to the Emirates and Xhaka scored that deflected.
Oh yeah. But the game never moved. Yeah.
I think we lost 2-0. Or something like that. But, I mean, he's beaten Arsenal too, and again.
But yeah, we did City 3 out of 4 times last season.
He's got a winning record against Spurs as well. So again, I'm not worried about him in the big games. He's shown that he's got acumen to manage those games. It's a question mark over whether that's because he sets up to counter. But I've no problem with that if it gets us results. And for the time being, it is doing. And I don't think that's unreasonable because as much as I like our squad right now, and I do think we are the third best team in the country when we're at it.
When we're on, yeah.
Which I think we will be eventually again. I think it is just going to take time. I still think that it's better to be shrewd in those games. And so I think coming into this Chelsea game, what disappointed me when I saw the lineup was that you talked about, it was rewarding the players that did well at Newcastle, but couldn't you have rewarded them by playing them at PSG then?
Well, yeah.
So I don't really buy that.
By the same token, surely you reward the players that played against PSG. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to see. But what I would say, and again, we'll find out on Wednesday night. But I think what's happening is that they're trying to manage the squad through this opening.
I think so.
Months. I think what we'll probably see is maybe a return to a similar team or formation against RB Leipzig on Wednesday to the one that we saw against PSG. I think that he sees value in playing 5 at the back in those games. PSG and RB Leipzig is a tough group to get out of, and we do well in the big games with Fred McTominay, we'll come on to later on, breaking up play and feeding the counter attack quickly with quick simple passes. So again, I think coming into this Chelsea game as well, the other thing I would say is that it's probably not that stupid to think that you might be able to get something out of a game against Chelsea if you shut up shop, just because until recently, their defence hasn't been very good either.
Well, I mean, look, if Rashford takes his chance in the first half, maybe we're having a different conversation here.
Yeah. Where I'll finish and where I'll come on to ask you what you think. With all that being said, love Ollie, like where he's taking us, generally happy. The with the squad, not in life. With
No, nobody's happy in life.
returning to work next week after 7 months of furlough, so
Very tough scene.
But with going into this game, I wanted to win it, and I do think that I just can't really excuse, and I don't want to beat up on him, but I can't really excuse starting Daniel James in that game.
No.
I think had Martial been fit, Martial would have played and Rashford would have been in on the left, and maybe he still would have started Mata. Mata has looked sharp this year, but it's such a drop off in quality to play Dan James. Yeah. And I can't really believe that there weren't other options. I know he says he's rewarding them for playing well against Newcastle, and he played okay against Newcastle, but he didn't play particularly good. And at the end of the day, it's about getting results. So I'd like to have seen us get at Chelsea more, because you talk about Rashford to the chick. I want Rashford to do better when he gets into these one-on-ones, and I think that's the next area of development for his game. Which sounds silly, but because he's not bad. He gets in behind the fence, and we've seen him punish, I think, at the Spurs game a couple of years ago. But he's got to be more clinical in those scenarios, and he should have done better. But we didn't create that many chances, and he did try to change things, though. I will say, in the past, another thing people have been critical of Solskjaer of is that he's been a bit too conservative with the subs.
Too late, yeah.
I have to say, now that we've actually got a good bench, we are starting to see him make moves. Pogba and Cavani coming on, that's an attacking move. There's no other way of looking at that.
The bench is the strongest bench we've had in years.
Yeah.
On Saturday, I think Pogba, Van der Beek, Greenwood, Cavani. Yeah, I mean,
Henderson's not a bad keeper.
No, exactly. That's a strong
I joked to a mate that if you take Bruno out of that starting 11, the bench would have beaten, the starting 10 on the other team, and I genuinely believe it. But that's what I think. I'm disappointed we didn't win, but at the same time, I can see the value in just getting a result. Him wanting to have ground that out. I think the bigger game really for us is the Leipzig game at this point, because if we can win that and we go to 6 points in that Champions League group, it will really release a bit of pressure in that group, because it's not a given that we win this game, and we can't expect that we'll just be able to beat PSG at home just because we beat them away. It'd be a different game, and I do really want to get to the knockouts of the Champions League, so I can see that he's trying to manage these games, I think, at the minute.
Yeah, it's not easy, and like you say, he has got a squad to rely on now. I think my take, just quickly on the Chelsea game, was I think both teams set up very, very similarly. Both tried to counter-attack. Chelsea obviously sat in a lot of protection for the back. They sat up with a back three, which makes it more difficult. But I think once we'd seen that Chelsea had set up a little bit deep and a little bit defensively, I think we should have changed a bit quicker. I think we probably should have gone to one sitting rather than both McTominay and Fred until I think the 80th minute when it was changed. And I think we brought Greenwood on for, remind me, I can't remember now. It might have been McTominay actually. I just felt it was a little bit of a missed opportunity that neither side was good, but we didn't grasp the brass ring and go for the win until the last 10 minutes, but it just never seemed likely. So I get why he did it. I get why he played for a clean sheet at minimum, and if he nicked a goal, great, 1-0, whatever. But I don't know. You accused me of being a little bit flippant at the time, and yeah, I was. I do get a little bit like that. There's no doubt about it. Straight after a game, I'm probably not the right person to be texting about it. I'd have sold every player on the pitch after the game. But yeah, that's being flippant. But at the same time, I think there was a level of truth in my frustration of missing that chance to go and beat Chelsea. I thought Chelsea had caused us a lot of problems with that team. I thought that would, that front three, I think it was Havertz, Pulisic and Werner, I thought they would run rings round us, in all honesty. But
they did nothing.
But they did nothing. So, I've been seeing the first half and gone, well, they've not brought their A game. Let's go in for the kill. We never did. We never, it was a struggle getting through the midfield to our Chelsea as well. But McTominay and Fred, we couldn't get Pogba, Fernandes, Rashford on the ball at all until the last 10 minutes. We just could not get through that line. It was just sideways and backwards and in a circle. Lindelof, Maguire, McTominay, Fred were passing to themselves. And it was very frustrating to watch. I don't know if you've got a similar take.
No, I agree. It is frustrating to watch. I'm higher on Fred than you are, and that's been the case throughout.
Yeah.
I know you don't think he's a bad player. I think you think he's a bad footballer.
He's a bad footballer, but not a bad useful tool.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Yeah.
No,
I mean, technique-wise, dreadful. I can't see it at all. Tell me why he stands over a free kick ever.
No, I mean that's ridiculous. I agree with that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't kick a ball. So I don't see it. So yeah, as a useful tool, he can break up attacks. Get amongst them. He's a good athlete. He's a really good sitter.
There's a couple of times where he burned Kante with pace and power, really.
Yeah,
off the ball. No mean feat. Kante's really smart in those situations.
Well, Kante's probably arguably the best in those situations. I mean, his defensive brain is excellent. He's very rarely out of position. He puts out a lot of fires, and he does a good job in that position. But in today's game, you need somebody who can do both. You say Fabinho's the best defensive midfielder in the league. I agree, and that's because he can do Fred's job and he can play a forward pass.
And he can do it better than Fred as well. I mean,
he can, yeah.
No one's about it. He's a much better defensive player as well. But
that's why you say we need the two people in there, one to sort of put the fires out, and the other one to get on the ball and play the pass.
It's not necessarily about that either. I think the reason. So to go back to your original point, it's frustrating for me too, because much as I like Fred, and I value what he is good at. He does need to play in a 2, because in the defensive midfield slot, in between the two centre backs, he's almost. When he first came in under Mourinho and he had his few opportunities, he did try to play those penetrative passes in between the midfield and into the forward positions, whether it be Pogba or one of the forwards dropping too deep because we're playing Mourinho ball. But he did try to do that a lot, but a lot of them were either intercepted or would end in nothing, where he'd make the pass and then the play would break down because one of the other consequences of Mourinho ball at that point in time, that squad was just all very slow. Yeah. There's no tempo to us. And he was trying to introduce that. And I don't know whether that has discouraged him, but he doesn't do that as much as he did under Mourinho anyway, I'll say that. But regardless, I agree that, like I said, Fabinho is one of the best defensive midfield in the world because he can do all those jobs that Fred can do and more. He's more physical, he's better in the air, he reads the game better.
And so was a prime Nemanja Matic as well.
Yes, exactly. Which
100%.
We didn't even sign. But, we got him a year after his prime, and he's had spells of being good for us, but he's never. I think his first season he was okay, but I mean even that tailed off, and again,
but he was awesome, wasn't he, Matic, in his prime? He was really good.
Oh yeah, he was one of the best defensive midfielders in the world in his prime. He was 25, 26 at Chelsea. He was great, and again, in that restart we had last year, he did fine.
Maybe because he only had to play 10 games, and he probably just thought, "This is it. I'm staying fit. I'm going to give it all."
The cup competitions the European Cup competitions were delayed.
Yeah.
So you were playing every Saturday, or maybe there were some games where you were playing the Wednesday game, but by and large there was a good gap in between the games, and he was able to, and like you say, was reduced amount of games, and he was able to actually think as well in the cup games that they played for Fred McTominay as well. I seem to remember the Norwich game we definitely did that. Yeah. So he was given that rotation, and so he was fine. But again, he's 32 now, I believe. And even when we signed him at 29, he wasn't able to play 3 games in a week, which is what this season's going to require, which is why I would like to have seen us get a defensive midfielder, as we discussed on a previous podcast, because we need someone that can do that. But Fred, in that slot, it always results in passing it to the centre-backs, and he has to do it. I know it frustrates people, but because he can't have that little bit of quality, and because he's not physical and tall enough as well that he can sort of jockey around someone pressing him, he has to offload the ball quickly.
Yeah. Because you see,
you wouldn't want him not to.
Pogba's great on the ball, but Matic always gets the ball on his left foot, holds the man off with his right arm.
Same thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he can afford the press because he can buy himself time to offload the ball if he can't find the pass. Fred can't do that. He has to offload it quickly. So it often leads to us playing passes lateral or backwards to the other centre backs, and we try and go around the press. But it's very predictable, and it leads to the sort of performances we had the other day against Chelsea, and it's frustrating to watch. But until we get Matic back match fit, which I presume he's not at the minute, again because he played that 10 games, I'm guessing that he's burnt out, and that's why he's not seen him play this early stage yet.
So I think the solution is that we've talked about is, well, first and foremost, get a defensive midfielder who can do both.
Yeah, which we can't do now until January, and I don't think we will.
No, I don't think we will either. But so maybe the solution is the 3 at the back with the 2 wing backs.
That was what I said on the weekend to you after the game. Is that they're the 2 ways around it. We can either try and play maybe McTominay, who does try those passes too, not always successfully, but he does try those passes from that defensive midfield slot, or like you say, to play with the 2 wing backs. And that worked really well against PSG because Tellez actually offered a lot going forward as the wing back. Wan-Bissaka did his job, and he didn't offer anything going forward, but he was a body who would press forward and ask to drag the defender back, and it meant that then we were able to get the midfield a touch less involved in the build-up play and more dare to break up play and then feed it to Bruno or the wing-back, or if the pass was on to Rashford or Martial. That's great if we're going to set up to counter, but that is going to be hard to digest for a lot of fans who want to see us dominate at this stage. But until we get a defensive midfielder, I think that really is the only way we're going to be able to play a form of attacking football. Unless Scott and Fred do continue to play, and we can find a way of incorporating maybe Pogba in the wide left position. Maybe then him or Bruno can drop deep, and then they can bring the other into play. But I'm sceptical that'll work.
Yeah, I'm sceptical too. You mentioned Pogba there. Let's get to the discussion on the Monday Night Football last night. I'm guessing you saw the majority, if not all of it, and Gary Neville was defending Paul Pogba. That's the first time we've seen that happen, isn't it?
It was a really weird viewing. Again, if it's the first time you listen to the podcast, he just rubs me the wrong way, Gary Neville. I agree with him 95% of the time, but even when I do, the way he comes across just rubs me the wrong way. But he's been one of the leading Pogba out people in the press. He's not always said it overtly. I mean, he has on occasion. I'm thinking of the tweet when Mourinho was sacked, but there have been other times where he's tried to be a bit more diplomatic about it, and I think that was the angle he was taking before the game last night on Monday Night Football. But then after the game, when Jamie Carragher started to not attack Paul Pogba, but criticise him as a team player almost, and say that he's more of a talent than a great footballer, and then Neville was then defending him. I can't get a measure of Neville's opinion of Paul Pogba anymore. I can't get a measure of what he thinks on anything. He's sort of sometimes all over the place, it seems to me. But yeah, interesting breakdown of the midfield. It's clear that at the moment we're talking about it now. It's been a topic discussion on Monday Night Football, and it's something that we've changed, during the restart last year, and now at the start of this season. We've seen different formations and systems and combinations put out there by Ollie, so it's definitely something to thinking about. I don't know what to say other than I sort of agree with what Neville said in the end, which was that there are other ways. That?
Did you just say you agree with Gary Neville?
Just that when he was put on the spot by Carragher, he was saying that there will be other ways of getting Pogba in there. And I do think it will be in the midfield. You mentioned after the game that you would be happy with holding or sitting midfielder and then Bruno and Pogba. I said I wouldn't be happy with that, but Gary Neville said that last night, and I think that's where he sees us going, because I think he was talking about maybe coaching Bruno and Pogba in the same way that Pep coached Silva and De Bruyne. I don't see that at all. I don't think
he did mention that. Yeah.
I'm Paul Pogba's biggest fan. You're not going to be able to, at this stage of his career, coach him to be a good defending midfielder or a player that thinks with any defensive discipline. It's not going to happen. I love him. That's not his game, and it will never be his game. I'm not convinced that he'll be able to play that.
To be honest, Kieran, if you try and drill that into him, you take away what he offers offensively, or at least you dull it down. You don't, maybe not completely take it away. So that isn't the solution. It's never been the solution to play Pogba in a holding role. When he first came in, he was, first playing the left of a three. Then he's, in the hole maybe behind, in front of Scott McTominay and Fred. We've played him in a lot of different positions, but I think the solution here is to not have to rely on him defensively.
Mm-hmm. Which is difficult when we've got Bruno now and now Donny van de Beek, because you can't play three or maybe even two advanced midfielders in the modern era. I know City do it, but they really do pack out that midfield area with their fullbacks and with they'll always have one or two midfielders who really will sit, whether it be Rodri and Gundogan or Fernandinho and whatever, and they will get a lot of defensive work from their attacking players. So I sort of see where Carragher's coming from that point. They've got a team that is, they've been drilled to be so disciplined. And again, ignore what I said to an extent about Pep at the start of the first half. He's good in, he's an excellent coach, there's no doubt about it. He's one of the best. I don't see that ever being a part of our game, a part of Pogba's game. I think that really his best position is, I say a 10, but I mean, a wide 10 on the left. I think that's his best area. He creates the most damage from there. He's good at getting into the box onto crosses.
Inside left, yeah.
Yeah, he's good in those areas, and I think that maybe there's room for him to play there. I don't think that that's where Ollie sees him. I think Ollie does see him in a midfield 2 with Matic when Matic is fit, and then Bruno as the 10.
And I think that work.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately is what we're going to resort to when Matic does come back and is able to play a few games. I think that signing Donny van de Beek will then, I think that's direct competition for Bruno, and I think that Fred McTominay will then come into games where we're playing lesser opposition to rotate the match. I think that's what we'll do when we've got match fitness where it needs to be, maybe in a month or so. And I hope that's what we do, because I think that much as I would like to see Pogba in one of those advanced positions, then you're taking out one of Martial and Rashford. And now we've got Cavani, you might be losing both of them. I don't necessarily want to see them come out of the team.
Pogba can have that impact from deep as well. We've seen him play, he might not be directly involved in a goal, but the amount of times he picks the ball up on the halfway line, holds somebody off, beats a man, plays a good pass and gets us moving, that's as important, as slotting somebody in for a goal. Yeah. So I don't think he's completely wasted if we can get somebody at the side of him to cover his defensive duties.
A lot of in that period, the restart last year, a lot of what Pogba was about was the hockey assist, where he was playing the pass to the assist. Yeah. I think of a lot of times where he played the ball from our half to Bruno in the final third, or whether it be Rashford, Martial, or sometimes Greenwood, he would find the pass, start the attack, and then within one other pass or a dribble, we were in. He's capable of that. You just don't want him to have to do any defensive work. And again, it's a shame that Matic isn't peak Matic, because I think then we would be talking about a really good midfield. So that's down. I know that you've probably cooled off a little bit now on Fred and McTominay, so probably be a little less entertaining for listeners, because I did have a defence for them, but
I still don't think it's going to see us progress in any form if we keep playing those two at a consistent clip, in all honesty, because they strangled the life out of us going forward. They're good defensively, and we don't see many goals with them on the pitch, but I don't know. Trying to see them move the ball through the midfield, it's painful.
But that's where I come down. When they're playing in a midfield 2 and we've got a back 5, that's great. But I'm with you. when we're playing with a back four, we're then struggling to get the ball out of our own half. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, and Saturday was just the culmination of that. It was blatantly obvious, and that's what made it so frustrating. That's why I was hot at full time, because it was just difficult to watch, wasn't it?
But what I would say to you though, is if I was your counsellor, is
go on.
Don't hate the players. It's not Fred and it's not them. That's the scenario they're up against. It's not their game to break down a defence, and they shouldn't be asked to do that, but they're being asked to do that.
No, I know, I hear that, but it's hard not to, isn't it? It's hard to not direct your frustration at the personnel.
I think it's too hard, because what they do offer us, they do offer us a lot, and I think in McTominay you've basically got Darren Fletcher light, and in Fred you've got an industrial midfielder who will break up play, and I think almost the way Ollie sees playing them two is a bit like how Ferguson used to see the big games where he played Darren Fletcher. We'd switch to a 5 midfield and Fletcher would do
Park,
yeah, and so there is a value to those two, and we've won a lot of big games with them doing their job, not having to do much going forward, because they don't offer a lot they don't really offer anything going forward. But then when we're in a situation where we can't break a team down, I'm not looking at them and getting angry because Fred can't break the pass through the midfield. It's not his game. He shouldn't be asked to do it. We've got to.
Yeah, but then the question is, why isn't it his game? And that's because he's not good enough.
But he's good enough at the thing he is good at. It's like
yeah, but that's what's holding us back from becoming a City, a Liverpool top team. Because it's a player wasted having to have two in there rather than one who can do the job.
But not, in games where they're both playing and we're playing a back four, I agree. They're not good enough in that scenario. But we've seen them play a lot of games where we've got a back five and they're perfectly good enough at doing what they're good at. There's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? And Liverpool play Henderson, Wijnaldum, and who I've mispronounced his name again.
Wijnaldum, yeah.
Yeah, Wijnaldum. And Fabinho.
Yeah.
And between the three of them, there's not an awful lot of creativity. Granted, there's a little bit more from them offensively, but I think that's more to do with the team they play in.
And then you look at the quality of the fullbacks, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we're chasing. When we play in the back five and Tellez is the advanced left back or the left wing back, it then doesn't really matter that they can't create because there's other ways forward and they're fine then. And I like the option that they give and the rotation that they give. We're going to need them big time. If we're going to be good again,
it won't be the last time we see them.
They're not. I agree, but where I do agree, I went on a journey with Fred last year where I was defensive of him, and I quickly came to realise that he's not good enough in that defensive midfield slot to when we're the better team, we're trying to win a game. It's not his game, and that's not to say he's not a good enough player to play for Manchester United. There's definitely a role for him. He's just not good enough in that position.
Okay, that's fair. I suppose that's fair enough. Anything else to add on the United chat?
Well, I want to wrap up. Do you think Pogba and Bruno can play together then? Do we agree on that?
Yes. I mean,
despite what Carragher was saying.
That was a nonsense because the last 10 games last season, that was the best 10-game spell we've played as a team in the past 5 years.
At least. Since Ferguson.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those two were instrumental in that. And I actually made a point of saying Pogba is more of the reason for the front three becoming the force they were than Fernandes. Yeah, Fernandes was great, but Pogba coming back and opening the gates for him was at least as much of an impact as Bruno Fernandes was.
I'd point Carragher to the start of that restart where we played Tottenham and we were losing the game.
Was that McTominay Fred as well?
Yeah, with Bruno. And then we brought Pogba on.
Yeah.
And we immediately clicked and everything was going and we looked like we could play football again. Lo and behold, Pogba attacks Dyer, wins the penalty, Bruno converts it. And then from that point on, they were starting together. And granted, again, the opposition weren't always, the top 10.
No.
But that, you play the top 10 half of the time, and so they can. We've seen that in those games they can. And I get that, you could maybe say that the restart last year was an outlier in terms of football, but I actually think that was more like what normal football is. I think that the opening few weeks of the season is actually the outlier. And the one other defence I will say, which, to be fair, Gary Neville made well last night, was that Pogba, we signed Bruno at the end of January, so we've had him for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
What a 7 months that's been for me, because that's my furlough. What am I talking about? I've been on furlough for 7 months since the start of April.
It's 10 months,
end of March. Yeah, we've had him for 10 months, but in that time, Pogba's been injured. We've had the break.
He's had COVID.
He's been injured. He's had COVID. We've had the break where we've had no football, and we've had this pre-season.
Yeah.
They've not had an awful lot of time to play together, and it's kind of actually mad how well they actually did link up in that time when you take all that into account.
Yeah.
There's definitely a route forward for us in that respect. It is just a case of finding the balance, and I'm really happy to close on a positive note. Where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's got this squad now is we've got options, and that's the best thing about it. We're still lacking in areas. We could still have got Sancho. We still need a defensive midfielder. Maybe we still need a centre back, given that Axel Tuanzebe's got a poor injury record.
Mm-hmm.
And you could make a good case for all those three positions. But where we've improved, Cavani's come in. That's going to offer serious competition for Martial and Rashford to an extent, because you could argue that Martial could challenge him on the left. Where Van der Beek's come in, we're now going to have a rotation option for Bruno, and he will offer something different to Bruno. They're not the same type of football. They're just playing a similar type of position. And he's excellent. Like, it's not a question. He's shown in last stage of Champions League games he's an excellent footballer.
Yeah, and we're not always going to have Fernandes, and nor should he be entitled to play every game. Like, any player should be challenged. So
I mean, he is, but I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
He deserves the red carpet on that from him. And I've only seen him play once, but I really like what I saw with Alex Telles, and now gives us that option of playing with 5 at the back. You need attacking wing backs, which Shaw isn't. Granted, the other side, Wan-Bissaka doesn't offer us that, but just having one makes the world of difference.
Wan-Bissaka's a better defender than Shaw, though, isn't he? So.
Oh, but he's a better defender than any other fullback I've seen, I have to say. I think he's excellent. But, it'll be interesting to see whether Telles can play in that back four, whether he's good enough defensively and whether his pace, whether he's got enough pace to do that. So we're in a really good place with the squad now. We're a better team than we were when we were the form team in the restart. We're definitely you look at the start of last season, the squad versus the squad this year. Let's not overreact to this opening month or two. This squad, I think, will come together really nicely at the end of the season, and I think that could really tell, because I just think the nature of the season, the fact that teams haven't had a proper pre-season, and we're blessed that we're one of the few good teams that have a good squad now, that might be really beneficial. So I'm still really confident about this year. Forza Ollie and
Ollie's at the wheel.
And j'adore Paul Pogba and hate the son. I don't know if you've seen that also, but
with the French national team. Yeah.
I hope
complete nonsense.
I imagine they'll do well in the court against the Sun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Kieron, thank you for your time. Thank you for your positivity.
One last thing. Sorry.
Always ruin my endings.
So, one more positive note. We should not mention Marcus Rashford again.
The king of all men. Absolutely.
Just obviously the PSG goal again.
Oh, is that what?
No, it's not. No, it's not. But as a footballer, you could have finished a couple of chances against Chelsea, but he's everything you could want in a young, homegrown football talent. But off the pitch, just an absolute inspiration. So really happy that he has won. I know he's not won that particular battle with the government yet. I still think that it will get there, but whether he gets to that stage or not, he's already won. And
I think the petition's had 1 million signatures now. I've signed it. I'm sure you have.
Coldplay got on board actually, so it's gone mainstream. Coldplay, so it's really in the mainstream now. Yeah,
cool.
But obviously, Always was, but
yeah, no.
you actually
can't
have a
say
bit of
no.
a smart about you, actually.
Do I?
And maybe I'll check Google after the game
I think I'm probably a better singer than Chris Martin, to be perfectly honest.
for another podcast.
Might
You're
be a
going to
bit
sing us
cheerier.
out.
Oh no, I'm not going to do that.
Did.
Yeah, no, I did.
That's all from me. Sorry for disrupting you. You can have your happy ending now.
Thanks, mate. On or off camera?
On.
No, thanks as always for your contributions, your positive contributions in the second half. It's been nice. I'm in the same place as you. I feel very positive about United going forward. We've had a bit of a shaky start, but the signs are there. The squad's there. I'm hoping we can push on from there. So, Kieron, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'll try and edit this down and get the transition smooth. Fingers crossed. It's been a bit of a bumpy ride today, but thanks for your patience. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching and listening at home. We appreciate all your following, all your shares, all your social media likes. If you do want to get involved with us on social media, we are at Zip Sports Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The website is zipsportsmedia.com. This video version is available on YouTube if you're listening to the audio version, and the audio version is available on iTunes and Spotify if you're listening and watching to the YouTube version. If you can keep up with all that, I do applaud you. Thanks for sticking with us. But join us next week for what we're on episode 4 of season 3 of A Game of Two Halves.